Welcome back to another episode of Annie Makes Art School. Today we're going to be doing one of my favorite artistic practices and something that definitely fits into Ugly Art Week. It's a practice I call Frankensteining. If you follow me on social media, you've probably already heard me talk about this before because I love it, but it's basically the idea that if there's a piece that I consider a failure, which I don't think is a real thing in art, you're always learning, but anyway, if there's a piece that I'm not happy with how it turned out, instead of looking at that as a waste of materials, a project that's set aside, I can revisit it later along with other failed pieces and combine them into a new Frankenstein beast made up of old components. I can draw in over the areas that don't work, I can cut out areas that do work and reuse them somewhere else, and the end result can actually be much more expressive and fun and imaginative than the original was attempting to be. An example is here in my sketchbook. Oop, wrong page. There we go. So this was an illustration that I started, and there was something really off in the proportions of the jaw. I made her face too narrow, it looked weird. So I tore out a section of it. I actually still have the other section here. Ta-da! See, it was too narrow, weird. But when I put it into my sketchbook, I gave myself a bigger canvas area to be able to draw in the face as I felt like it should have actually been done. And I think the end result is cooler than it would have been by itself. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. It's my YouTube video. It's what we're doing. So your first assignment of Frankensteining is going to be to collect pieces like that you feel like either there's something a little off that just drives you crazy, or pieces where almost all of it is wrong to you, but there's like one piece that you're like, man, I did like a beautiful eye on that face, but the rest of the face is so wonky. Gather any pieces like that you can find, and don't worry if they don't seem like they can fit together. We're gonna address that. Okay, so now that we've gathered some of our supplies, we are gonna take kind of an inventory of what we're working with. I was able to get the following components: this mouth that I already cut out of a drawing that I didn't like the rest of, the jawline that I talked about earlier, these eyes, which are fine. Honestly, I'm not even wild about them, but at the time that I drew them, I liked them enough to cut them out. I've got a couple of my blind contour drawings from earlier this week, which I don't consider failures, but I'm not using them for anything more finished at this point, so I'm gonna incorporate them. And then I have this portrait that I did when I was experimenting with different acrylic mediums. I didn't include it in the video on that, but this was kind of a test run I did for myself, and I do not like how she turned out. There was a lot of fun play, there's some cool textures and stuff, but the proportions are weird, she's kind of wonky. It was a pretty sloppy study. So I don't want this board to go to waste. I don't want these materials to just, sit in my apartment being something I don't like looking at forever. So I don't think that I can combine all of these things into a single piece. I'm gonna do two different resolutions. So what I mean by that is all of these little pieces are similar in size. Like this is actually weirdly perfect. I was looking at this earlier while I was gathering supplies. I can take this jaw and put it right over that, and they've got very different styles, but they actually fit together quite nicely. Versus this is very small to fit on that face. This is a very different size face than the other pieces. So for this one, what I'm going to do is pick what small section that I like, and I'm going to eliminate everything else from it. In this case, I've decided that I like this eye and eyebrow area over here, so I'm going to block them out with painter's tape, and I'm going to, maybe I'll just trace out a shape. Point is, I'm going to block out a section of it, and then the entire rest of it I'm going to cover with a solid coat of color. And then from there, we'll see where the adventure takes us. At the same time, in my sketchbook, I'm going to take these smaller components that fit together better, and I'm going to assemble them into a weird chimera of elements. You'll see what I mean? Follow along. Okay, so real talk, I already like this more. So since it was an experimentation in texture originally, now that I've covered it in a matte coat, you can still see some of the image underneath. Like you can see her hoop and where it breaks up that rough texture underneath. You can see her jawline where I had that like tar paste on it. So it's left kind of a very faint inclination of where the rest of the face is, but really focuses in on just that one triangle. Honestly, I'm gonna let this dry and think about it, but I might just like that like it is. I already have a spread of my sketchbook painted pink. I didn't do the cleanest job, but it's Ugly Art Week, who cares? And I've got some of my pieces cut out. I'm gonna cut out the rest, and then I'm gonna use some Mod Podge to just kind of lay them out on the page, and we'll take it from there. Here we have the stunning conclusion to my Frankensteining process. So for the first piece, I had planned on covering most of the area in black and then drawing back on top of it, but I just really love it with that weird subtle texture behind it. And for right now, I'm just gonna leave it exactly like that. That might be weird, you might not agree with that choice, but I like it. Down the line, if I decide that I wanna revisit my original idea, I'll add line work in on top of this. That option's always available to me. But for now, I'm just gonna sit with it like it is for a while. So that's piece number one. For piece number two, I combined all of those other elements into this kind of chaotic, part journal, part Frankenstein monster spread. And you might not think it's pretty. It's for Ugly Art Week. That's the point. But all of those were components that I felt like had the potential to keep being something other than what they started out as. And it was really therapeutic to just lay them down on a page and not worry about it needing to be something gorgeous and perfect and finished exactly. This is part of my ever-evolving sketchbook. I might come back at some point and add on to this. I might completely paste over top of it. It doesn't matter. If there's one key point I want to drive home throughout Ugly Art Week, it's that I want you to try and prioritize process over product. In art, of course, it feels really good when we make a successful piece, something that we feel growth through, that others connect to, that people want to hang on their walls, whatever your definition of success is, of course that feels good. But I think as an artist, it's important to value how you get there more than that end result. I think that if in this process I had fun and I learned and I tried new things and I released some stress from my body and I opened my mind to new ideas, I think that that's more worth it than if I'd done something that was in my comfort zone that would have yielded a more pretty product, but that I wouldn't have learned anything through. So I hope you guys had fun. If you do any Frankensteining on your own, as always, please tag me so I can come cheer you on. I'd love to see what you guys made.